done designing the transaction processing terminal, which is this. The next terminal we should go ahead, which is this. The next terminal we should go ahead and design is the transaction terminal, where we can see the transactions that we have in the system. And one of the things I would like to do is that we could follow the same methodology we utilized here. I'm thinking, should we actually, because this actually has a considerable number of design functionalities that we can actually take advantage of. All right, let's also start from scratch and see how we can design the transaction terminal using the various components that we've designed here as well. All right, so this is a transaction terminal, and it has what I would like to do is I would like to split this into two screens. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. I'll put this on the left side, so I would actually split this into two screens like this. All right, so we can have room and we can see what we're doing. Okay, so I don't like the portion of the screen this is on, so let me change that again. Let me launch the transaction processing terminal, and here I would like this to split like that. All right, so that this is how I want it. So what happens is I have transaction details and I have entries. I'd also like to see a bunch of stuffs here. So what I'll do first is actually name this form properly. So this transaction terminal should be transaction terminal, all right? Or should we say general ledger instead of transaction terminal? I think the ideal thing we should do, no, let's just call it transaction terminal. We can design general ledger later. So we have that as transaction terminal, where we can see all the transactions we have, and we'll probably search for a transaction, something like that. And typically we have we have some details here, and I would like to take advantage of it. So let's go ahead and do that, and let's see. The very first thing I need is that each transaction we have this cell which can tell us their current accounting period, but that would take so much space for the current accounting period that we're actually having these transactions enlisted in. So what I think we will do is we can have the accounting period information on the top of the form here, and that will do. The next thing I think is that we have transaction details here. We can also have transaction details here, and let's do that. So I will do this. I will right click on this, and I will copy everything in that group box and paste it in here. So I'll paste in here. All right, so now this is, because it's docked, that's why you're having it here. So what I will do is I'll come to the properties window, and because I'm currently selecting this, I can actually pin this here, and I'll check the column. The column it's spanning two columns, and it is in column 0. Group box 1 is in column 0, and it is in row 4. So what I needed to be in row 0, and that is basically what I will do. So I have those there, and another thing we need is we need more room here. So I can come in here and actually drag this to have more room. All right, so that looks better. The next thing we need is we have these entries, and we need to copy the entries to this part of the screen too. So what I'll do is right click, and here I will copy and click here and paste it as well, and paste. I will also adjust this to be in row 1, it's the case maybe, and here I will change the column index. Let it be in column 1, not column 0. Column 1, and it shouldn't span 2 columns. It should be 1. Shouldn't, no, yeah, so that's where it should be. The next thing is I want the account details and the balances. First, let me copy the balances. So just copy the balances, come here, and paste the balance. Do the same thing, just move the balance to row 2 in this case, and shift it to column 1. And that makes more sense. And something just this shouldn't span 2 columns. This should be column 1 as well, and this should be 0. All right, this should be 1, and that's how I want it aligned. The next thing we will do is I need to copy account details and amount, and that is very okay. Do we need that? I'm not sure we do need that at this point in time. We don't need this entries. This is enough for what we intend to do. And what we should do now is I can bring this down a bit, bring this a bit so that we can have more room there. I can get this up a little bit so we can have more room up here. This is better enough for us. We can see everything at a glance at once inside here. And I think I am done with this part of the controls. I've seen what I want. And the next thing I would like to do is I'll come to my toolbox and grab a group box here and put it in here. And here I'll cause the group box to span a couple of rows. Thinking where we can actually see the different transaction informations and know what they are, and we can also see all the balances to make sure all the transactions are balanced properly. So what we will do here is let's forget about the last thing I said. Let's focus here. So what I will do here is I'll put here let me see journals. Let me use the word journals inside here. And here I'll cause this to span a couple of rows. In this case, I would like it to span, we can make it span 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. So I think I can make it span 5 rows, and that is okay. So we have that span 5 rows, and you see we have that here. And we want it to dock as usual. So dock in 5 rows, we can say dock full. That is more. So I think this is actually 4 rows. Let's put 4 rows here because I still need the space down. And that is what I want. So I have journals and I have the details of each journal. Then I'm going to take in here, I'm going to look for probably a list box in this case. Let's just have a list box here. We haven't used that. And I like to dock the list box as well. So here I would put a list box that is docking to the parent container. And here I'll call it LBL journals. Like that. Then I will also do something else. We have LBL journals, so we can see all the journals in the system. I'm thinking something just skipped my mind. It's okay, let's leave it at that point for now. Let's have it that way. What else should we do? All right, while this is here, we can go ahead and actually disable these properties. First and foremost, let me close this. I'm done. And let's make this actually contain as much information as it should be. So here I have a resolution of this. We can expand it to actually accommodate more features. So for learning purpose, let's use it this way, a little bit this way, so it can accommodate more things. So it can reflect as much as possible. All right, so this is good enough. And we actually can, this is docked, no it's not, so we can actually stretch this to be this way. All right, and this is our transaction terminal, and we have journals listed here, and we have the details of these journals here, this part of the screen. You can name this whatever you want. Just I'm trying to share an idea, a concept, a design concept you can use. So let's go ahead and all right, we have the fundamentals here now. Let's go ahead and actually kick the code behind file and inject some functionalities into this. So the very first thing I would like to do on form load event, this is what we need here. I prefer this, so I would remove this because we don't need that. On form load event, not form load, we actually need, let's go to the code behind file and grab some of the implementations we did for the transaction processing terminal. For instance, I need the journal service and I need the accounting period. Those are the basic things I need. So I'll come in here and put them here. I actually don't need the business account classification service. I don't have need for it. And I actually have no need for the account service. So all I need is an accounting period and the journal service. So here I can inject this into a constructor. And that is what we need to do. All right, that's good enough. The next thing, I like this to always happen before initializing this component. So the next thing we will do now is we don't need this. We can actually remove this. As my convention, you know, I actually don't have need for this. I think there's so many things depending on it. Let's leave it. So we have this in here. And this is good. So what we need is we should always have a way of actually injecting the account service. Most times you want to open the transaction terminal for another account in here. So something like that. But for now, let's stick to the default accounting here. So that being said, we can also do the accounting year period like this. And we need to put it in here because it is necessary. And we will also come here and copy where we say if accounting period is null, then it should throw an exception. That is one thing we also need to copy. And all right, so all this should happen before we actually initialize component. That is one. So the next thing we can do is no need for us to bind the minimum, the maximum date value. Those are not necessary at this point. What we should do next is we would like to actually want to bind sources. But this is what I need. So we need this to be copied to the form load event that to specify the accounting period. All right, that is what we need. And that is good so far. So the next thing is we need a list of journals. All right, that's very vital. So we need a list of journals. So we need here a list. Let's make this an I list of journals. Of journal data object like that. And here we call it not journal data. So let's call it journals. All right, so we have these journals in here. That is good. The next thing is we would actually love to load all the journals we have in a system when this is actually loading, because that's what we want. We actually want to get all the journals ready. So what we need to do is probably bind journals. All right, I like the idea of binding journals. So what we need to do is we can instantiate this to be null. All right, so that it doesn't, we're good. So that is good. So what we need to do here is bind journals. So probably like void bind, not this one, bind journals. Let's do this. And what it will require for us to bind journals is we want to get all the journals based on a particular accounting period. So what we need to do here is we can say if journals equals to null, not journal service. If journals equal to null, then go ahead. I think I can call it journals like this. go ahead and get us journals. So here we can say journals equals to service dot get journals. All right, and here this actually requires you to specify an accounting period. So we'll call the current accounting period .id, and that is what we need. All right, that is what we need to get journals. Alright, correct. Let's just say probably I'm missing something. .id. What is this? Can I convert enumerable? Alright, so this we can actually change to a list. To list, and this is all done. We're definitely sure this is not null, because if it is null, it will throw an exception here. If this is null, this throws an exception. So definitely at this point, this is not null. And another thing we will do now is we get all those journals, and we need to specify the way what we need them to be like, where we need them to be, how you want to view them. So for instance, we can actually say, let's bind this to the list box. So this.lbl journals. Yeah, we can say journals.data source, and we can specify this to be journals. And here we can also say that this.lbl display member list box. I don't know why I call it LBL. It should be just LB journals. LB journals, LBL journals dot display member. Remember this? It's like a combo box. Display member. Here we need to define which member we want to display. And this dot LBL journals dot value member equals to what property of the journals do we want to bind to. And these are the fundamental things we want to say. So this is good. Let's go inside the journals. Let's go inside the journals data object and have a look at what it is and which of the properties we want to bind to. So ideally we should bind to a journal ID, I think so. So we can actually stand here, and actually a journal is supposed to have a journal number. So we can say public string journal number, like that. And here we can pass in a property like this, and we can come in and say there should be some form of representation. So we can say, we can come in and say JNL. All right, not this one. We can say journal ID. This, just pass in journal ID, because we believe journal ID should be automatically generated in the system, and that should be the journal number. No, not here, sorry, journal ID. And we can say, just put a prefix like JNL and something like this, or dash this, and that should tell us the journal ID. All right, we can have that, and that is good enough for us, and we can use this as our own journal number, or we can get convert this to a string and actually use it. All right, so I'm thinking anything you want to do, you can do it. So we can have that property like that, and let's see what we'll bind to now is journal number. All right, so we can come to the transaction terminal and see what we need you to get. Bind the value member should be the ID, and this should be journal number. All right, that's good enough for us. So let's go test this out and make sure that this loads properly. So for us to do that, we need to come to our form shell as usual. And here we had transaction management here. We should push it down to here, and we should open transaction terminal. And here we can just say load form as we did for the rest, load form. And here we'll pass in form transaction terminal. And that is all we need to do. But before we actually do that, we need to come to the program.cs file and be sure that we have that injected into our dependency injection container. So here you have to do this and make sure we have that injected. All right, so that is good. So let's run this now and have a good look at it and see what we have, what we've done so far. So let this come up. I actually didn't build this to check if there was any errors. Alright, so yeah, we have that now. So we have transaction management. Let's open to the transaction terminal, and we have this. But actually, there are no journals in this part of the screen because we didn't bind them. So we can go ahead and close this and actually come to transaction terminal in here and called bind journals. So let's do that now, bind journals, and let's run this again. So we can come here and check transaction terminal. Alright, so we see we have JNL3, that is the last journal we created. So we have JNL3 in our system. So we have that in place, and we've seen the journals display. Let's bind to the other components in the form. Now to bind, we need to work on the select index change event of the label control. So here we can come in here, and we need to work on the select index change event of this control. So I told you this should not be LBL, this should be LB, list box, and I'll use the opportunity and change it as well. So we've changed that to list box. All right, and once I do access that event, I just need to double click on this and it will open the select index change event of this for me. So what I need to do is I'm going to grab a particular journal and display the details of that journal. First and foremost, we have all the journals in that particular accounting period. And what happens is I'm going to say var journal, or let me use the word selected journal equals to this dot lbl or lb journals dot selected item, and that is the one I want to work with. So once I say selected item, I will just pause that, and that is, I think that is basically that is the item I want. And we should know that this is actually a journal object, so we can cast it to a journal data object, and that is what I want. So if we say we need to check that selected journal is not null, so we say selected journal is not null, and we can go ahead and bind the journal properties to what we have there. So what we need to do now is we need to come to our transaction terminal. I need to, let me check out something. I need this line of instruction. All I will do is I will copy this and come here. But let's do this. Let's just actually copy this two set of instructions and come to our transaction terminal, and we paste them here. So once we do that, we know that we need journal here. So I can say journal data object, journal, like that. And that is good enough. And that should actually work the way we want. And here we need to specify entries. We need to specify the entries the way we want them. So here we need to actually, we remember that here the first one we had entry models, and the signature for the entry models was the signature for the entry models was actually different. So what we need to do in this case, and we had a binding source called entries. All right, so we actually did that. What do we need to do here? Do we still go down? All right, let's, I'm thinking what we should do. What we should do is, let's comment this out for now. I'll still work on them. And we have format grid, and this is DV entries. This is actually good. DV entries is actually formatted properly, and we need to specify what we need to do. So first we have the data object from the database come in the way the database wants it, not the way we want it. But we can actually specify how we want this object constructed from the data or from return from the application layer. And that will actually make sense. Or we can actually present it the way we want by getting the journals and translating them to our entries. Let's do that. So what we need to do is we can come back to this terminal here. So we have this, we've copied, I think we should copy, let's come up here and copy this binding source entries and this list, right? We just copy this and come back to form terminal. We could define this in here, doesn't matter. We could do this in here, still good enough. But this journal entries, we can actually specify it to be null. Definitely should be null. And there's a better way we can do this, but just learn this with me. We can have this journal entry models like this. We can call it yeah, it's okay, journal entry models, and that is good enough for us. So what we will do here is we will actually, once we've gotten the journal object, what we need to do is actually translate that to the journal entry models. So we can say each time this happens, we need to discard the first, create a new entry model for this component. So what we can do here is we can say like journal entry models, like let's do that. Journal entry models equals to new list of journal entry model, like that. We can do that. Do we actually need to do this? No, we don't need to do this here. No need to do this. Let's copy this and put it in here. Instead of having that here, we can have that here. So let's go ahead and bind journals. We can actually instantiate this here, and that is good enough for us. So what will happen here is that before we need to clear the last entry for each entry. All right. So for instance, I need to say journal entry models dot clear. All right. Remove everything you have already, if there's anything, and go ahead and journal entry models dot for each. I don't have that in here. Dot add. Right. So what I will need to do is I'll write a for each loop, because I expect all journals to have an item, which is an entry in it, like this. So let's do entry. I need them to have an entry, and here I'll pass in journal entry models in journal. I think that's what we call it, in journal dot journal entries. All right. So in journal dot journal entries, go ahead and journal entry models dot add. Yeah, that's what I need. New journal entry model, like this, and we can bootstrap and we can actually initialize the properties there. Here we will do the very basic thing. So let's come here, and what I did here was actually translate a journal entry, like the properties like this, and I don't think I should do that in here. Let me see. We have thought I don't need to do this in here. So let's come back to here. What we need to do is I need the ID. I need an account ID, for instance. So here you can give me entry.account ID, and I need account details. How do I get that? So because I know that entry does not have account details, I definitely know that it does not have account details. Sorry about that. The next thing we'll need is entry type. Entry type is something we need to specify. Entry type dot entry type. Another thing I know we need is amount. Just tell me the amount. Entry dot amount. This is good. All right. So What we need is entry type description. That's the next thing we'll need, entry type description. And I'm very sure that we do not have entry type description. Oh, we do have entry type description. That is better. So this is what we need, and this is what we'll send to the client. All right. So for now, we can look at this, and we're sure that this will bind properly. Let's actually check out if we have all the properties. I think these are the 5 fundamental things we actually need. So we have that in place. So here we can actually specify that entries is equals to journal entry models, which is true. And we can set that DGV entries, the data source, and the bindings BN entries is like that as well. When we have BN entries, let's go, we actually missed something. Because look at BN entries here, we actually didn't copy this. So here we need somewhere to inject BN entries. So what I'll do is I'll first copy this. Let's just copy this first. Here, let's copy this, control, copy, and let's come to, we've copied that. And let's come to this point in our form and paste it. Paste. So we actually have it here. What I'll do is I'll shift the balances down a bit. Is that necessary? Yeah, we could do that. There's still room for us, so we can go ahead and shift this to this one in row 2, we can shift it to row 3. That is good. And we can actually shift this to row 2 instead of row 4. Row 2. First, let's make sure this is in column 1, like this, and we can shift this to row 2. Alright, that is better, and we have that in place now. And we can actually adjust this to actually make more sense. That is better. Another thing I'd like us to do here is actually disable this control, or like have them locked, so that you can change the values. So we can have this locked. And that's another thing, lock them so no one can actually change. You can make changes to it. You can just toggle here, it will change to lock is equals to true, and toggle here locked equals true. And here entries itself, we can have them locked so that nobody's able to tamper with the values. So we have that in place. So we can come back, we can save this and come back to here, and we have entries properly enlisted. All right, so let's go ahead and see what that looks like in runtime. All right, so here we have this. Here we can go ahead and select transaction terminal, and we have that. And unfortunately, we are not getting the details, probably because we didn't bind. Let's go ahead and bind this. Well, all right. So here, remember, we have bind journal. So once we do this, we should bind journal. And here we need to get in the selected journal. Selected journal. That should be what we're getting. Selected journal.id. That is what we want. No, just selected journal, not anything. Selected journal, and that is good enough for us. So let's go ahead and run that again and have a good look at it. So let's come to transaction terminal and see. All right, this we're beginning to get error. So we have transaction date, and this is binding. This is transaction date. All right, 1 second. Let's clean this up. So this is actually a traditional error. This cause is a traditional error that I'm aware of. And to go ahead and clear that error, let's be sure that we're on the same page. So when we launch this, we get this error. So this is actually a traditional error, and for whatever reason, this causes two bindings in the collection to bind to the same property. So this always triggers an error, and the way around it in modern context is always to clear any existing bindings. So to go ahead and do that, in case you come across this, all you need to do is you just need to come here and say this .dtp second DTP transactions data bindings transaction data bindings clear. So this actually clears any bindings if there that was existing before, and probably for whatever reason. So we will do this for every author property in here, so that we clear whatever data bindings that existed before. So, and we go ahead and do this. So here we can come in here and actually specify so this is just clear. It's called the clear bindings, and if there's any bindings that existed, maybe because we bind it to the list box control, so just clear whatever bindings and go ahead each point in time and go ahead and go ahead and clear the bindings and wrap this in a new binding. All right, that is the idea. So because once we have this, initially when the form loads, you need to actually clear the bindings and give room for the new bindings to take effect or to take place. So here we have this ready. So let's go ahead and check on the transaction management transaction terminal, and we see the bindings actually get in correctly. So we have details. All right, this is good. I appreciate this. This is binding. Classification is not binding. Transaction definition is not binding, but we have some transaction details binding here. That is perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and actually get this component reflected properly. So what we need here is that we had selected value to be this, and we pass in journal classification. First, we do not even have the bindings. So what we need to do is we need to bind the rest of the components. For instance, we need to bind sources. So here we need to do the bind sources, which is actually this code here. We need to call journal definition and journal classification. We need to do this. So we need to copy this, come to transaction terminal, and actually put them in. Should we do bind journals? Not actually bind journals. Let's do bind sources. Instead of doing that, let's just copy all this here and come to here and actually put it in here, or put it in here. So we have bind sources, and here we can remove this because we do not have need for it, and that is better. All right, so we have bind sources. We need to bind sources in here, so we can bind sources like this, and that is good. The next thing I notice is that when we cannot get the account name or account details, so we can come back to our journal service, and actually in here we can actually grab and access to the journal service, the account details as the case may be. So we can bind to the journal, so the account details. We need some way to get the account details in this kind of scenarios. So what I will do is I'll come in here and grab a read-only account service. Let's go again and get the account service here, and colon service account service, something like that. And we need to add this to our constructor so that the DI container can also inject account service for us. That is good. So the next thing we will do here is that each time we grab and we want this, we need to get the account entry object and add it as well. So we need somewhere to actually get these definitions properly, and we can do that. So what I will do here is, this is get journal. Let's do for get journal. Let's start here. So here I'll do something like entry type description equals to entry type. What I'll do dot enum.getName, getName. Here I'll pass in like usual. Let's pass in a journal entry or entry type. Yes, entry type, and this will pass in a parameter, and we'll pass in entry dot entry. Not this one. We'll pass in entry dot entry type, and this will give us the actual name of that entry. Sorry about this, that's an error, and we can have this. All right, this is good. So we need to specify this for all the journal entries. That's the first thing we will do. All right, and just do this for where you have journal entry, and we can go ahead and do this. This is good, and I think we're done with that. That is good enough for us, and we can do that here as well. So the next thing I would like us to do that will actually make meaning is enum.getName, remember, returns a string. So this actually gets the string for the name of this enumeration. So what we need to do now is we need to get account details for this account, and we can do that because we know that account is there. We can say account details equals to entry or service, account service dot get account, and here we can pass in entry dot account ID. And we should also know that if we entry dot account ID, sorry about this. Oh shit, sorry about this. We can do this, and we can get entry dot account ID. This get dot gives us the account, and we actually need to get the account details. All right, so here, let me check. I think it's details. That's what we call that object, and we can get that. So one thing is how we show that this is not null. How are we very sure that this is not null? One thing we can do is we can actually let me see what we can do here. So let's do this. Let's come in here, grab out this object, and create a var entry like this equals to this, and here we can put that there, and here we can add entry. Let's refactor this to be this way, and here we need this account details, which is very necessary. So what we need to do is we can go ahead and tell the account service to give us the account details, and how do we get that? We can do something like var account equals should we actually do this at the repository level? That would actually make more sense if we actually get the repositories don't return that details. All right, it's better. The repositories don't, so it's good. So it's not going to work that way. So we can do this. So we can get an account, and first let's be sure that the account is gotten from the service based on the ID, and we can do this, and this is good. And we can check if account is not null. If account is not null, let's write this way. We can go ahead and adjust the entry here and put in the account details. We can do the account details equals to account dot details, and this is what I think we should do. So what I'll do here is I would actually come in, grab this object like this, and adjust it for every place we need to add journal entries like that. That is better, and we can do that something like that in here as well. That looks better. And here I think we have one condition here, journal entry. Yeah, this is good enough for us. All right, so here we need to call journal entries, not this we need to call journal entries. This is actually a better, sorry, not journal entries. We need to say list.add, and this is good enough for us. So we have the account details. So this makes more sense. All right. So this, you see, that's one reason I like working with prototyping the application using Windows Forms. So we have that in place, and we can come back here and let's actually run this again and actually see if we're actually getting the account details this time. All right, so we can come to transaction terminal. Let's see. All right, so we get the account details properly, and you can see the account code, account details, and the name is showing properly. And let's expand this. You can see we're actually getting the bindings here, but better. And what we're missing is we are missing the balance computations to actually see that if this is balanced. All right, so let's go ahead and implement that. To implement that is quite simple. What we need to do is just come down here and copy this out. Just copy this. We need to copy this here and come to here. What we need to do is format grid. Once we do that, we can actually do this. Yes, we can actually do this. And this is better. We get the balances properly and we can have a look at it. Let's go back and check if that is okay. So we can come here and actually have a look at this. Let's click here, transaction terminal. Let's see that the balances are actually reflected properly as they should be, and we have this. So what we will do now is we'll create a new. Let's go to processing terminal. Let's create another transaction code. Let's give this some form of code like this. Select simple entry again. Here we'll select general. Here we'll select payment for software development. And here we can do the same thing. We can come into what we need to do is we can come into current assets and we can select, for instance, let's use cash at hand, which is not possible. So we can say this is 3,000 and then the 30,000, and that is a credit because it's an expense. You can add that entry, and we can also say let's select an expense account of his expenses or something, and we can select of his expense. There is actually nothing there. Let's select other expenses and we can say some liabilities. And this time we can should we use that? Okay, so we can say this is 30,000 as well. That is better. And this is credit debit, and we can post it as debit, and this balances are okay. So we can go ahead and save that entry, and journal processing successful, and we've gotten that in. But something's obvious, this is not cleared and this is not cleared as well, so we need to clear this. But before we do that, let's be sure that that is in the database. So we have now two journals. We have one for JNL3, we have JNL4, and you see we have this and payment for software development. And we have there's a problem, we're not getting this cleared properly, so let's go and do that very well. All right, so we're back here and we can do that. We can actually reset the bindings because we need to do that. So what we need to do is BS or entries. Let's do entries. Before we do this, we need to do entries dot reset bindings to actually reflect the metadata doesn't change. So actually that falls. And what I did is actually I cleared this. Right, so we cleared this and there was nothing. Let's just be sure that that is proper. Let's go back and check that again. So here we can general ledger. Let's check transaction terminal, and we have that. And when we select here, all right, so this actually clears, and you notice cash at hand and some liabilities, and you notice the changes we implemented properly. So we can have all our journals listed here, and we can go through one transaction to the next transaction, and that is fairly good. And let's make a little adjustment to this particular Windows form and make it much better. So we have the projects here, and so basically we have that. Let's come to the not this one, sorry, this one. Let's come to the main form view, and we're on the form itself. Select the form, and here we will adjust the default Windows location to be center screen. All right, that's one. The next thing I think we should actually do that will benefit, that looks vital and necessary, is first I'm thinking, could we actually have the cumulatives of all the balances in all the journals, and we have them at the bottom of the screen, something like that, so that we know that at each point in time we have this transaction terminal, we have equal credit balance or debit balance, equal debit balances and credit balances. If we do not, we actually know that we have a fault somewhere in the system. So what I will do now is, first I've put this at the center of the screen, as the case may be. The next thing I would like to do is the summation of the balances, as I earlier said. So what I will do this time is I'll get this. Let's copy this like this, and here we'll come to where we have buying journals here. I think that is better. So we can come here and define this. So here we will go in. This is going to be a bit difficult, because we need to, at a point in time, we need to understand the balances at each journal. All right, so on each journal, and I think that is very necessary for us to do. So what I will do is, while I keep this, let's comment this out so that this doesn't run. Let's modify our journal data object a bit, and so that we can have this property specified. So here I will do this. I'll say public decimal. I think that is ideal. Public decimal, and here I would call it debit balance, and here I'll wrap up something like if journal entries, I know definitely that journal entries is not null, for instance. So say if journal entries let's do this. If journal entries has a value, if there's a value in journal entries, I'm trying to enforce that. If it is not null, we can go ahead and do a sum, get a sum of all the balances. So x this dot amount. All right, so that is what I want. But here we need to actually specify that journal entry is not null here. All right, so another thing, like this should actually be this. All right, so what we need to do here is we should actually check where first. We could call where, and we pass in these parameters to make sure that we're actually selecting only those that the entry type, for instance. Let me see, entry type equals to, well, since this actually is, we know what this is, we could say 1, for instance. We know that 1 is debit and 2 is credit, so we can specify that. And here we can say 2, and this we can actually say credit balance. All right, credit balance. If that is the case, if this is the case, we can get this. And if this is not so, if I'm thinking how we can supply another value if these are not null. All right, so because definitely this should never be null. In the real sense of it, it should never be null. So all things, what we can do here is we can come to transaction terminal and initialize this. When we initialize this, we can actually come to the journals themselves, and we can say go through each of the journals like this, each of the journals, and we can no need for us to do this. All we need to do is we could sum all the credits, journal credits, as well as the journal debits. So here we could say a sum of this, and here we'll say the stored debits balance, and we can just string this. At this point in time, this can be null, all right, and we need to wait this to string. This has a tendency of being null, so I think we should actually brace this like this in case this is null. And we should do the same thing for journals.sum credit balances. If they're not actually null, that is what I'm thinking. I'm sure they will not be null. No matter what, they should never be null. Alright, so we can do this. Let's see if we're actually getting this correct. Another thing we need to do, we need to come to the design mode, not this terminal. Actually I'm missing this. We need to come to the design mode here, and we can duplicate this object at the bottom here. So what we can do is we can come in here and copy that. We can copy that and put the cursor here and put it in here, and here we can make sure that this is in column 1 and this is in row 4. That is correct. So we can do this. So we can say consolidated balances, and here we have debit and credit, and we might as well, let's do this. Actually, this font is not our font here is not Sergio, it's JetBrains Mono. So we need JetBrains Mono, and we need it to be 11. That's what I prefer. Now this font becomes very, very big, so we can minimize this and actually reduce this a bit. And I think this is just too big. Let's Control Z. Let's change this to 10. Sorry. Let's change this to 10. This is where it is. We have that, and let's change this to 10 instead of 11. Let's make this 10, and that should reduce the font proportionately to a manageable size. Alright, this seems better, and but this is actually too big, so we should actually shrink this here. And here we can shift this a bit here. That gives us more room there, so we can come here and shift all this back inside like this. Alright, this is better. So we can have that, and here we can adjust the credit and the debit balances to be of a more of a greater font size. So here I can change this, just those properties, we can change them to 12 and make them bigger and better. And here we have this, we can, for this, only this two, we can give them different colors. We can give debit balance should be green and credit balance should be red. So here I can come in here and let's spin this here and change debit balance to the background should be back color should be let's select the web color. The debit balance should be green, so we should become, let's check something that is, let's check something that is forest green. That looks okay, and that is okay, and the font color, the full color should be white. I prefer that. Let's use white smoke or white. That's better. So we can do the same thing for the credit balance. We change the full color to be white. Let's check white here, and we can change the back color to be red. So here we need something like Let's use maroon. I think so. That is revealing. So that is what we should have. So let's go ahead. We've done that now. We can save this and go and check this in product and in runtime and how it actually feels, or how it actually looks at runtime. Looks in runtime. So we can, let's just monitor this. So we have this here. So let's come to transaction terminal and have a good view of it. So this is good. This looks better, but we cannot get the consolidated balances. I do not know why. All right, because I did not attach them. All right, sorry. So here we need to come here and I need to say, give this a proper name, because right now it is not given a proper name. So we're selecting the properties like this. Should be LBL consolidated credit, and that is good. So here should be LBL consolidated debit, and that looks perfect. So what we need to do, we can come to the terminal here and we can adjust this to be better. So we can come here, remove this, and we can change this to the stored LBL consolidated debit and .text, and this will be LBL consolidated credit .text. So we can have this. Let this be what it is now, and let's go ahead and check that again now. All right. Actually, we need to change this to consolidated debit balances. So we can say consolidated debit balances. Let's put this as well, consolidated credit balances, and we can have a view of that. So here we can come in here, and that will not load immediately until we restart the form. So we have this, and this looks better. So we have 33,000 and 33,000, but there are so many overlaps here. So I think that it's good. So let's go ahead and implement that properly. So we can come back here and let's come back to the design. Did actually show consolidated balances without us refreshing or restarting. I think that actually did. So let's come back here. 1 second. Let's come here. Let's get this to display. This is taking time. Let's close this and reopen it. Here, transaction terminal. So let's get this to this portion of the screen, probably bound to dock to the left part of the screen. So here we can have this dock left, like this. We can have this dock right of the parent container, and I think probably that is better, and we have those. So let's run this again. Alright, so we can come to here and we can have this. And we have this, looks better, alright? So this looks a whole lot better. So we have consolidated debit balances, consolidated credit balances being equal. At every point in time, that must always be equal. If not so, it means there is something wrong in the system. And that is what we seek to establish. So I think this is good. I think what we should also do is we can also get this dock at this part, this edges, so they can actually fit well. Because if this increases to 1 million or hundreds of million, this will actually overlap. So we need to do that properly. So we have these journals here, and as a rule of thumb, you do not edit anything in the accounting system. So these journals don't support editing, not at all. You can go ahead and actually implement a search mechanism for journals, where we can actually search journals and have a good view what we can do with them here, and we can do a whole lot with this. Another thing we can actually do is, let's just keep this simple, and let's do this. Let's go ahead and actually implement what we said, that this should not align, should actually anchor or dock to the left part of the screen like this, so that there will be room and that this doesn't clash. So we can actually do this to dock. And another thing we can actually do is when this form opens, it should actually maximize full screen. And that's another thing I like to do. On open, do maximize, something like that. So I would actually prefer to set the maximize property to true. Alright, so let's see if we I'm not sure we actually doing that. We can do that here, but we can set on the property. Let me see, I think I saw something like that. That's form terminal, and Windows state, instead of normal we say maximized. Alright, so whenever we open this form, it should actually maximize. And that is the whole idea. Another thing is the shell form itself. I would also like it to maximize when it opens on the screen. Like, instead of it to be this, it should maximize properly. So this actually gets dark on the screen, and this looks better. Alright, so we get to see this in a much better way. So when you open this and you have this is a system, it actually looks like a system, and you have the TCS accounting series version, transaction terminal, and you have the date and everything. And you notice that you cannot edit. I thought I locked this, that it cannot be edited, but obviously that is not working. So let's go back and implement that. So what I did was I expected this to be locked so that it cannot be edited, and I think that is not getting, I'm not getting that specification. So I think locked is true, and this is locked. This should be true. Let me check. Text, this is locked. True. This is locked. True. And why was this? This is locked. True. But I was able to edit it. Alright, I'll go check that again. And one thing I needed to do is the shell. I want the shell to actually maximize on load. The initial load of the shell should do maximize, and that is what I want. So let's come back here, and so there I want the shell to maximize on initial load. Alright, so let's go ahead and see how that feels like. So we can we see that this actually maximizes on load and looks like a system, and we have our menu. We can also make this bigger and better. We can add a tool strip bar that shows different controls. All right, so we can have transaction terminal. We will see that it maximizes properly, and that's what. And I needed to make sure that, I don't know why this is actually allowing edit, and this is not supposed to allow edit, and I don't know why that is possible. So let's go ahead and I would check why that is so. Probably I don't have any idea. It's a simple thing. Probably I could also use the enable or disable property to make adjustments to these forms, and to make them the way I want. I can make this 1 second. Oh, sorry, I did a mistake. The locks allow you to lock the properties in one position, that they cannot move or resize the control. Sorry about that. What I needed to do was to disable edit. So I need to make this read only true. Like, that is what I want. This is read only. Sorry about that. Sorry, I missed that completely. So this control should be read only. Let me see this. Does not allow you to edit. Read only, true. This should be the selection buttons should be, let's see, Let's see what we can do. Let me see, because I don't want this to be selected. Allow drop down false. This to allow drop false. Allow drop false. This one allow drop true. That doesn't solve my problem. Allow indicate whether the control can accept data that the user drags into it. No, that one. That's not what I want. I want a property that should not allow the user. I don't want to disable, because I could say enable true, disable, enable false. So like that will actually not. But I just want something else. I just want to show you how to play with the properties. No matter what you do, I just want something that maintains the integrity to the viewer, to the users, and probably a mistaken button click. It doesn't change anything. I want this to let me see. Probably I'll be forced to use disable. So enable true, enabled false. We can use that. Enable true, enable false. Here I think this should be, if it has a read-only property, I would actually specify that, but obviously it doesn't, so I will say enable false, and here is read-only, and that is good enough for me. So what we can do, I think we can go back and check that and be sure that this is actually exactly how you want it. So the beautiful thing about the transaction terminal is that it gives us all the journals. We should move this to the next thing, which is actually having a good idea about each journal entry, probably like the general ledger, where we have all the entries in a particular accounting period or a particular accounting season. And that is the next thing I think we should actually implement. The general ledger should also allow us to, another thing that will be required by an accounting system is what we call trial balance. So the trial balance actually informs of the balances of the account and ensures the integrity of the system, that the rules of double entry are actually maintained during all the postings into the system. We can go ahead and implement that as well. So first let's look at this and be sure that this is good. This actually will not allow you to edit. It's locked now because you can edit, and this is good. So the beautiful thing here is that we know that all the transactions posted in the systems are actually balanced, and we are actually obeying the principles of double entry. The next thing we can do is let's go ahead and do some general ledger thing that shows all the accounts and how we make the postings. All right, so let's go and implement that. And that will be a bit different because you're going to utilize something of this nature. So let's close this. And we need to implement a general ledger. All right, so we need to implement this in the next segment of this series.